Considered the economic hub of South Africa, the establishment of Gauteng has been traced back to the early 1800s, when settlers set up villages in the area. The city of Johannesburg was founded after gold was discovered in 1886. It grew to become the single largest gold producer in the world. Rural settlements rapidly developed into shanty towns made of corrugated iron. This became the backbone infrastructure upon which the modern-day city region continues to be built. Recently, the Gauteng Department of Human Settlements, together with the Gauteng Partnership Fund, hosted the Infrastructure Funding Summit to attract investors for the province's projects, which include megacities. We chatted with Premier David Makhura and MEC Paul Mashatile about fast-tracking the delivery of these integrated and sustainable megacities.
I'm very pleased that firstly the private sector players, people who have significant resources, have bought into our vision to transform the spatial landscape of our province. Therein also changing the structure of our economy to make Gauteng look very different from what it was, where you had black people located in the periphery, in places where there were no economic opportunities, far from transport corridors. The projects that we are seeing here that are initiatives, a lot of initiatives by different public-private sector players in partnership with our municipalities and provincial government. These projects are a sign of confidence in that vision. So I'm very pleased, but I'll be much happier. I was emphasizing when we were walking around here about when exactly is your project taking off, and with a lot of questions to them. Where are you stuck? Are you getting the kind of support you are getting from municipalities and provincial government departments? I think many of them indicated that they are at a stage where they are about to start. It's very inspiring to see, firstly, this vision about scale for us to address the backlog in particularly housing, but also for us to build in a way that integrates communities, that integrates human settlements with economic opportunities. For us to do that, we're going to have to start much sooner. And many of them did say that they are ready to start. There are agreements being finalized. A few of them actually have done sod turning, so it's exciting for me. I can't wait. Sod turning, essentially, that there are projects. The project has started. There are contractors on site. Of course, most of these projects, because we have to bring public housing into this, especially subsidized housing. Most of them would need us to put particularly bulk infrastructure. But the rest of the money, the rest of the investment is carried by the private sector. So Gauteng is exciting, it's exciting.
It is very clear to us that if we want to succeed in the implementation of mega projects, we will not be able to do it on our own. We do have resources as government, as we were explaining. The Premier indicated the 40 billion that we're putting as the Gauteng government. Obviously, municipalities, another probably 40 billion. But these mega projects are going to need massive resources. And there are a lot of resources in the private sector. So we are basically saying to the private sector, let's work together. Come on board, because what we are doing in mega projects, there are a lot of commercial activities there that will derive value for them. There's the building of shopping centers and other things. So we've received a very positive response from the private sector. We've got people here from the pension funds, from the banks, the state funding institution, your PIC, DBSA, IDC, they are all here, and we believe that's the way to go. As we said with the Premier, that with these mega projects, we can turn Gauteng into a construction site. We will be able to create employment opportunities, stimulate small and micro enterprises, create industries, new industries through the material supply to the mega projects, and also be able to develop new industrialists, particularly from the townships.
Even after South Africa's democracy, government continued to build houses and human settlements that reproduced the spatial legacy of apartheid. Far from work, transport nodes, and economic opportunities. Government currently wants to transform the spaces people live in by connecting and integrating places of work and human settlements. Radical steps are being taken to transform the spatial configuration and landscape of Gauteng through better and coordinated land use management and spatial development. In 2015, it was determined that 1.8 trillion rand would be required to fulfill the province's infrastructure goals by 2030.
Obviously, the 1.8 trillion rands is over 15 years. A lot of these projects that are unveiled here and they are being shown here are also medium-term projects. They will run between 5 and 10 years. There are those of them that are up to 15 years. We are talking about significant investments that run into billions of rands, but
so investments beyond just housing.
Yes, many of them would include energy, alternative energy sources, separate from housing. Others would also include public transport infrastructure, which is also separate from housing. And some are also including industrial parks as well as commercial hubs and agri-parks. So you have a lot of economic activity, economic nodes that are integrated into these human settlements developments. And for me, they kind of bring us closer to our vision that we can't build far away from where people work. We have to build nearer to where there are work opportunities. Alternatively, we have to create human settlements around where we already have economic nodes. So we need to bring housing into economic nodes. We need to bring economic development, new economic nodes and industrial parks into where there are people have already settled as well. It's an important two-way process.
How will you address the private sector's concerns regarding radical economic transformation, that it's actually not harmful to them, it is actually a win-win for them in doing business with the Gauteng administration as well?
Yes, Fifi, we have been talking about radical economic transformation here in our province over 3 years at least, since 2014. I've been talking about radical economic transformation. Even when I talk to business people, I say to them it is one of the 10 pillars of the Gauteng program for transformation, modernization and reindustrialization. It's not a secret, it's not something hidden, that it is radical. And we explain to business people that to keep an economy in the current form, where it excludes principally a large number of people, is unsustainable. And also there are other dimensions. So one dimension of it is to ensure that we change the ownership patterns. Another, we also need to change the industrial structure. So I'm amazed that it's only now that people have this response to the issue of radical economic transformation, as if it's just a discussion that started now. I have said to business people many times that they shouldn't be afraid of radical economic transformation. For any business in our space to thrive and be sustainable, they need to understand that a key component of that is that that business needs to transform itself to ensure it places a significant number of South Africans. So it's a business imperative in my view. Businesses operate in different environments. Yes, they must make profit. That's the reason they will come here. There's no business that will come to our province or our country if they are not going to make money. But we say the way that they can make money in a sustainable way is that they must be inclusive. They can't just look at making money and not take care of communities where they are located, not take care of the environment, and not ensure that young people, they open opportunities for the youth. We have large number of our youth who are outside the economy. It creates problems for our society. So radical economic transformation is also about ensuring that women, half of the population of Gauteng are women. Women can't just be on the margins of this economy. How do we do that? It's where we need partnerships. We need partnerships. Businesses need to be able to look beyond a more comfortable mode of operation. And we say in their value chains, those that are operating in different sectors, they need to open up their value chains and supply chains for black businesses to participate. And they will add women businesses, township enterprises, youth-owned enterprises. I believe they will add a great deal of value in these businesses. I think if you are in the automotive industry, you may have looked at the world in the same way. But once you bring in diversity into your business about who are your suppliers, they must be diverse. From who do you buy, that they must be diverse. Who are your partners? They have to be diverse. Once you bring that, it also transforms the nature of your business to enhance its profitability and sustainability into the future. So radical economic transformation is not a scare word. It's a necessary step we have to take as a country to achieve inclusive growth. Because inclusive growth is the goal in my view. But how do we get there? We get there through radical economic transformation.
After the break, we meet an entrepreneur who defied his disadvantaged background to run a successful construction company right here in the Gauteng city region. The Gauteng provincial government is working with state-owned enterprises and the private sector to ensure that a new built environment, an inclusive spatial landscape, emerges across the city region. This is being done through the public transport infrastructure development and the creation of integrated and sustainable human settlements and post-apartheid cities that are more connected, smart and green. At the Infrastructure Funding Summit, Human Settlements MEC Paul Mashatile gave us more insights into the local and international funders that are hopping on board.
With funders, your projects must be bankable. So at the moment, most of the projects you see here, they have master plans. So a lot of planning has been done, approvals for township establishment with municipalities. And in most cases, funders will also need commitment by government, particularly for bulk infrastructure. And then they will then assess how viable these projects are for them to put their money in. And some of them might pick and choose, others might come in and say, okay, I will just build bond houses or rental accommodation or shopping centers. And then government will say, okay, fine, we'll build a public school, we'll build a clinic, and so on. So it's a whole partnership, but a project must be well planned so that it can be well executed. Otherwise, it will be risky for funders just to commit unless they can see a comprehensive plan and all approvals on the table.
10 billion rand, that's how much you said Human Settlements receives annually, yet this is not enough. How much more would be required for Human Settlements and the Gauteng administration to continue to meet its development goals?
The 10 billion rand is the grant that we receive as Gauteng Human Settlement, and the other 5 is what goes to municipalities, the 3 metros, for bulk infrastructure. Obviously, as we said, it's not enough. We are currently in discussion with PIC trying to raise an additional 30 billion. That is over and above the 40 billion the Premier was talking about. And then we'll assess from there, because for this project to succeed, you need to install bulk infrastructure, water, sewer, electricity, do the roads for the developers to develop. And that's what we are busy with.
And just lastly, you did mention your interactions with international funders. You made a reference to some firms in Spain, a Spanish firm there even wanting to commit 5 billion rands towards infrastructure development here in South Africa. Are you saying that our Gauteng rather has not lost the attraction appeal from investors who are abroad, even after the recent ratings actions that resulted in a downgrade of our economy?
My observation is that international investors are still interested. Obviously, the downside of it is that your investment becomes a bit more expensive, but we have not seen boycotting of this destination. Those that I've met said, look, show us your plans, we're interested to come. But as I said, the domestic market itself is very important. In South Africa, you have more than 7 trillion rand in the pension and retirement industry. You have a lot of money in the banks. You have money in the state funding institutions. So you need to tap into all those. But certainly, international investors is our next target. When we start with the capital raising roadshow, once we've done the domestic market, we'll be putting a lot of efforts on the international market to attract foreign direct investments.
Tebogo Mafodi runs a construction and property development company called the TM Group. Having grown up in a township, his is a story of humble beginnings.
I've been doing this since from 2010, 2011. But it started off in the media and IT space. But I've always been fascinated by building and structure, so eventually decided to take a bull by its horns. I grew up in the dusty streets of Whiteville, Benoni. I went to a black primary school, a black high school. I remember at some point I couldn't even construct a sentence in English. So it was challenging because it was a poverty-stricken background. So growing up and not having a home in a shack, I wanted to be in a position to give people homes and lovable living spaces. So that's how I got to be in this business. So one had to drop out of high school because of poverty at home and actually go to night school and work during the course of the day to try and empower themselves. I did finish school and eventually got the opportunity to be discovered by the former president, who actually sent me to varsity to go do information communications technology, because that's the space that I originally come from. I taught myself computers from home. So that's how I truly became fascinated by technology. But now it's a question of how to bring technology onto the construction space, onto the property space. That's why the kind of properties that we do today.
Although he has a number of running projects now, Tebogo says that building the TM Group was not easy.
I started I was working myself, cutting people's grasses, get a piece job there. I remember there's an old man in our street that used to do people's houses, do roofs and whatsoever. So during school holidays and weekends, I would work with him, climb on top of the roof, be banging on things and whatsoever. I think that's how I actually started being a laborer myself, but eventually started, loving this, to realize one could actually start a business out of this. Right now, the construction projects that we have, we're building a Khulisa Skill Center in Vosloorus for the city of Ekurhuleni. It's say a training center for the community where people can come, learn skills for welding, for bricklaying and other things. And we're building properties, block of flats like the one that I'm standing behind. But this one is, we're doing projects like this where we're using shipping containers that we're converting them into workable living spaces. On some of the projects, we're actually taking shipping containers, mixing with brick or alternative building technology to actually build homes out of that. So there's a couple of projects that we're working on that are keeping us busy. That's why half of the time we're on the road.
Constructing properties from shipping containers is a relatively new concept in South Africa. Tebogo saw the gap and took the opportunity.
I spent 6 months of last year in the States, traveling between the UK, New York and California to actually see people's homes and projects that are done. And in the UK, there's actually an entire shopping center. It's a lifestyle shopping center that is done out of shipping containers. So it's something that you see it's new, but right now it's a trend that is now coming to South Africa. So at the end of the day, we've catch on to the trend. We want to be an innovative business. So I'd like to think we are a business that disturbs the industry. That's why we want to be the first companies to actually get into the space and do that. Right now we're actually doing a development similar to this in the township, because people are actually having backyards, rooms in their backyards that they rent out. So they don't even have a base in there, they don't even have anything. So but now we're trying to become innovative using shipping containers and bringing up class market into the township so that people are able to live and afford those spaces.
The Gauteng government has committed to procuring 30% goods and services from township businesses. The broader ambition is to change the negative perceptions about businesses operating from these previously disadvantaged communities. The construction and property development industry is a tough one to break into as it is, so Tebogo has had to run that extra mile to prove his worth.
Market access is definitely one of the biggest challenges in this industry, and one of the things is that it's a big boys club where certain companies are preferring to work with companies they've worked with for years, and for them to give an opportunity to a new player like us, it's something that's a challenge. They would rather give you small work than give you kind of big work. So you need to work twice as much to prove yourself and to showcase that you've got the opportunity, to be as good as the other companies are. The stigma is out there in the business vicinity and total that if you're a township business, you're giving shabby companies, you're giving shabby work, shabby quality. I mean, you realize the big projects like this, they're outsourced to small companies like us, strange enough. You think it's done by a big company, but the big company just got the work and the small company does the execution. Guess who those people are? People in the township. Afterwards, after all these people have worked here, they go to Texas, they go into the township. So people tend to think there's no skills, and those where the skills originate, that's where the skills come from. It's a difficult industry to access, but I mean, through hard work and persistence, you're able to actually have a footing. We're fortunate that through persistence is where we now have a footing, and we're trying to grow it. The highlight for me is knowing that there's people that are dependent on us to put food on the table. I love this industry because we're able to create jobs. I mean, right now we've employed over 170 people in total, only to find out because of us, those people are able to put food on the table, they're able to send their kids to school, they're able to do a lot of exciting things. For me, it's that highlight, knowing that somebody is able to provide because of you. I think for me, it's one of the biggest achievements than any other achievements that we've had. What I'd like to see ourselves in 5 years to be one of the biggest property developers in the country, with fronting the African continent, because Africa is open for business. The ones that these days I've been traveling extensively. Africa is growing infrastructurally. I want to be one of those companies that are able to influence those countries to actually improve infrastructure and have innovative projects like the one we have behind us. That's definitely my dream. The advice that I'd give to other entrepreneurs out there that are in the township specifically, the measure of a man is not how many times you fall, but it's whenever you fall, how many times do you get up, dust yourself and try again. You need to dream and let that dream shine and let it be the one that, makes you wake up in the morning and go chase it. I had a dream. I didn't have money, I didn't have network, I didn't have access, but I managed to make a success of myself, and I'm still working hard for it. So if I can do it, they can definitely do it.